Hi, I'm Peter Schrammel, CTO and co-founder of Diffblue, and I'm going to talk about how to upgrade Java applications at scale and with confidence using Moderne and Diffblue. A common situation these days is that you have an application in Java 8 or 11 using Spring Boot 2, and you want to upgrade it to Spring Boot 3, which also requires you to upgrade it at least to Java 17. OpenRewrite by Moderne offers you recipes to perform these upgrades automatically, but how can you be confident that nothing has been broken by the upgrade? You might be particularly worried about that when your legacy application doesn't have a sufficient level of regression tests. Diffblue Cover allows you to write unit tests for regression testing fully automatically for your entire application. And you can then run the tests after the upgrade to verify that your application still works as before. If a test fails, then this means that something has been broken during the upgrade, and you can investigate the reason and fix it. Depending on the level of coverage and test strength of the tests, you can now be a lot more confident that the upgrade has gone well. There is now also a recipe for a Diffblue cover that you can use within the Moderne SaaS platform and the Moderne CLI tool. This allows you not only to upgrade a single application at a time, but to generate tests and apply upgrades at scale across your entire estate of applications in your whole company. I'm now going to demo this to you using the Moderne CLI tool. I'm going to use an old version of the famous Spring Pet Clinic application using Java 11 and Spring Boot 2. So let's switch to Java 11 and let's compile it. So we see there are a few tests already in the application. They all pass. What we're now going to do is we're going to measure the coverage using Diffblue covers CLI. There's a coverage reports command, and we can then look at it in the cover reports dashboarding tool. We can now review the coverage in the cover reports dashboarding tool. The coverage is quite high already at 81%. We can certainly try to increase this further with the help of Diffblue covers test generation capability. So I'm going to do this via the Moderne CLI. First, I'm going to run a mod build. This scans the code base to build LSDs. That's an intermediate representation of the code base that then allows Moderne to apply complicated refactorings across the entire code base at high speed. So next I'm going to run the Diffblue cover generate unit tests recipe. So while this is running, I'm going to explain how Diffblue cover actually works. Diffblue cover uses reinforcement learning to write unit tests. It starts by configuring itself from the project's build system. It performs some static analysis to understand the code base and then predicts the first unit test. It uses domain knowledge in the form of contextual rules to select adequate test data. This first test candidate is then executed and its effectiveness is assessed based on the results obtained from the execution, such as code coverage. This information is then fed back to predict a better test candidate. And this process is iterated at high speed, 1,000 iterations per second, which allows Diffblue cover to scale to code bases with millions of lines of code. So let's see whether this has finished. So let's apply the changes it has made. So we're going to commit these to the branch. And we see there is a bunch of tests that have been created. To see whether they have increased coverage, let's run the Diffblue cover CLI, again using this coverage reports command. Yes, so coverage has increased to total of 98% now. In this diagram, you see what the previous coverage was and what it is now. And we also see how much coverage was contributed by the Diffblue tests in blue and how much was there from the user's original tests. So this should hopefully give us enough confidence for the upgrade that we are going to perform now. I'm going to run the upgrade Spring Boot recipe. So this has finished now. Let's apply the changes and let's commit them to the branch. Let's have a look what it actually changed. So we see that the Spring Boot version was increased from 2 to 3. There are a bunch of other dependency changes as a result of that. Also, the Java version needed to be increased to 17 because this is a requirement for Spring Boot 3. Yeah, and then there are a lot of other changes. Let's see whether everything still works as intended. So let's switch to Java 17 now, and let's compile the code and run the tests. And it seems something doesn't work as intended. One test failed. We can have a look here. It says wet controller, Diffblue test, show resources, wet list. Okay, so let's try to understand what is going on here. Going to switch to IntelliJ. It was wet controller test, show resources, wet list. So let's run this thing. And this test is indeed failing. What's the problem here? Yeah, when you call show resources wait list, we are expecting a JSON document, but actually we get an XML document. So this looks very suspicious. Let's see what that actually looks like when we run the application. So I'm now launching the web application. Let's open the website in a tab here. So this is the Spring Boot website, and this was the wets.json route. And indeed, we don't get JSON, we get XML. So this is certainly wrong. And the reason for that is that Spring has actually changed its default behavior regarding content media type negotiation. So this essentially has broken the upgrade. In order to reinstate the old behavior, we need to implement a web MVC configurer, and I have already prepared an implementation of that. So I'm going to add this to the code. I have it here now. There's now a web MVC configurer that reinstates the old content negotiation behavior. Let's rerun the application just to see whether this had some effect. If we reload this now, yes, then indeed we get JSON. And if we ask for XML, then we get XML. So this works as expected. So now let's also run this test again. See whether it passes now. Yes, and the test also passes now. That's great. Let's commit the changes. Let's have one last look at the coverage. Yeah, and the coverage is above 90%. We have an application that is upgraded to Java 17 and Spring Boot 3, and the generated unit tests allowed us to be pretty confident that nothing serious is broken. So this schema equally applies to any other refactorings that you could do with OpenRewrite recipes, such as getting rid of tech debt, applying coding standards and guidelines across the board to keep your applications green and up to date with the latest tech. And the regression tests generated using Diffblue Cover allow you to verify these changes at scale. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop me a message.